Sports with Sean Caravillas.
So just 1 point separates Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton in the race for the driver's title, following a dominant win by Hamilton at Silverstone. Here's BBC 5 Live.
This is 5 Live Sport.
5 Live Formula One.
Hello and welcome to Silverstone as we munch and have a look and peruse our way through what was a thrilling Silverstone Grand Prix. At times there was ducking, there was diving, there was racing, but one thing's for sure, Hamilton was in a league of his own. Lewis Hamilton wins the British Grand Prix for a fifth time ahead of his teammate Valtteri Bottas and Kimi Raikkonen for Ferrari. Alongside me, Tom Clarkson and Jack Nicholls, who are in the commentary box for that. And Jack, on the floor right now, it is wet because we had an absolute shower coming across about half an hour after the race. Things could have been so different.
Well, they could have been, but also it got pretty unpredictable even in the dry towards the end of that Grand Prix. Hamilton had pole position, he disappeared up the road at the front and really was never going to be challenged. Behind him, Kimi Raikkonen seemed to be following him pretty steadily. In the closing stages, Valtteri Bottas, who was ninth, had managed to fight his way past Sebastian Vettel, was closing in on Kimi Raikkonen. And then it all got weird with 2 laps to go. Both Ferraris had a front left tyre failure, puncture, delamination, call it what you will, and both had to drop a long way back down the field. Raikkonen got it at an okay time. His tyre sort of didn't come off. He managed to smuggle it back to the pits and still finish in third place. But Sebastian Vettel, from what was going to be a fourth place finish, suddenly finished down in 7th position. So it all sort of kicked off at the end there. So Hamilton took the victory ahead of Valtteri Bottas in 2nd place. So Mercedes won too. Third on the podium was Kimi Raikkonen, still an impressive performance from him, with Max Verstappen in 4th, Daniel Ricciardo in 5th, Hülkenberg 6th, and then Sebastian Vettel down in 7th.
So it means in the championship, Vettel leads now by just 1 point. Tom, a 19-point swing in one weekend. That's all of Hamilton's Christmases at once, isn't it?
It is. I think this is the pivotal moment. It's been nip and tuck in the 9 races up until now. We saw Mercedes really stretch their legs. I mean, around the Silverstone racetrack, the layout of this track really suits their car, but I think the level of their dominance will be sending shivers through Maranello, the base of Ferrari, and we've got races coming up that'll suit the Mercedes as well. I hope, just for the sake of the championship, that Ferrari can bring it back. I'm not sure at the minute.
There was a time, wasn't there, where you thought Kimi Raikkonen's doing all right here. He's about 4 seconds off the back of Hamilton, lapping about the same pace, and then suddenly Hamilton decided he needed a bit more of a gap. So bam, 1.2 seconds quicker, lap after lap after lap, and okay, maybe he's got this one under control.
Yeah, you're right. Totally dominant. For Bottas to come through from 9th on the grid to finish 2nd, I think he would have finished 2nd actually, even if he the Ferrari hadn't had any of their problems. So just utterly dominant for Mercedes.
And just on that point, 177 points for Vettel, 176 for Hamilton, 154 for Bottas. We will hear from Valtteri Bottas on the way. We'll hear from Sebastian Vettel as well and Kimi Raikkonen, but Bottas has managed to consolidate his position as well, and whilst he was definitely Hamilton's wingman today in the end, it doesn't take a huge amount for him to keep on closing that gap, does it?
It was his Silverstone wingman. The Silverstone wing is the big new pit complex they built. I thought that was a good one, but...
Hang on a minute, can I find a klaxon? No klaxons here, no air horns either, Jack, but you'll get joke of the day for that.
Thank you very much, that's all I'm after, really. I still think it's a stretch to call it a 3-way title fight. Now the top 2 are separated by just 1 point. I know what you're saying, but Hamilton was dominant again today, and it's going to take a lot, I think, for Bottas to be in this title fight. I won't rule him out. You're desperate to keep him in as a 3-way fight, but I just don't see it.
I like to add drama to the mix. So let's hear from our race winner, the man who has just been in superb form all weekend and who has certainly answered his critics.
It's been an incredible weekend. I think it's even more significantly important for me, being that I've come into a weekend that was questioned so much about my preparation, so much negativity was flying around, and I didn't let that in at all. It had no effect on me. I was here, I did what I felt was right, and that's the result you get. And hopefully there won't be any more questioning of how I prepare. And then just really the team did an exceptional job. Valtteri did an amazing job from 9th to come up. Perfect results for the team. Qualifying was super powerful, and then obviously in the race. every single lap I could see the crowd cheering from the start to the end. You know, they were there with me on the edge of their seats all the way, and that support never faltered throughout the weekend, and I'm so grateful for that.
Lewis, a 5 times British Grand Prix winner, putting you on the same peg as Jim Clark and Alain Prost up there. I mean, just do weekends like this even seem real to you?
Alain Prost and Jim Clark, that's just it. Those guys were bloody good. It's taken me a long time to get there, but I'm so happy to be up there amongst those guys. I'm very proud to be up there with the greats, and there's still a long, long way to go. So new heights, hopefully, will be set.
10 races in, and I think after the back of the last 2 races, you were in a place you didn't want to be. Do you feel like you've moved out of there and you're flying high again?
I like to think so, yeah. I mean, I felt that coming to the British Grand Prix would automatically do that, because the reception you get from the crowd, it's almost impossible to really describe just how amazing it is. You know, these guys that come out, the flags are everywhere, every single lap from the start. Turn 3, I could see in the corner of my eye the guys cheering. You know, turn 7, it's hard to see it through cops, but you know, come into Stowe and you could see it. Last corner, you can see them every single lap cheering, and that's just spurring me on, pushing me and encouraging me, and that love also really inspired me this weekend. So you know, anyone that's watching at home, supporting or here this weekend, just want them to know how grateful I am, and hope that I've made them proud, and plan to continue to try and do so.
Just 1 point now in the championship between you and Sebastian Vettel. 1 point, 10 races. That's all right, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, this weekend it swung our way, and we definitely needed that. This weekend's really a great showing of our team strength, and I really hope that we can continue to do so. But I mean, there's so many obstacles that we're going to be facing in these next 10 races. Who knows what's going to come, but all I'm going to make sure is I prepare the best way I can, as I know how to, and keep driving the way I am.
Tom, Lewis Hamilton has a way, doesn't he, of not conforming. He's his own man, he wants to be his own man, and yes, race wins are what does it for him, and he loves being in that car, but there's no doubt that between now and the next race out in Hungary and then in the summer break, there'll be more controversy, because he courts it, doesn't he? He lives on it.
Yeah, Jenny, you're absolutely right. He thrives on controversy. It's something we've seen throughout his career, and I don't think it's going to stop now. One of the things when you speak to particularly drivers who have been his teammate in the past, they do say that Lewis Hamilton is insecure, and I think that is one of the reasons why he sort of needs help, almost focusing to bring the best out of himself, and we're seeing it now. We saw it at the end of last year when the pressure was really on in the championship. He really got his mojo and was unbeatable. Can he maintain the level of performance that we've seen at Silverstone this weekend? That's the question for me. Will he go to Hungary and be as dominant relative to the opposition?
Well, he is dominant at Hungary. That's one of his strengths, is how strong he is around the Hungarian track. I think he has the record there for most wins of any driver as well, having just equalled the record here at Silverstone. So I think that's a positive for him. If we were going to somewhere where he'd struggled in the past before, if the next race was Baku, where he's never quite hooked it up, or something like that, then maybe there'd be a bit of concern. But going to Hungary, I think he's going to feel very confident, but hopefully not overly confident.
I have to say, listening to him there talking about, equalling the record of Jim Clark and Alain Prost, he doesn't normally care about stats, doesn't normally care about records. This pole position record of all time of Michael Schumacher's coming up in the next couple of races. He will break that if he continues to get pole positions. But that, for some reason, being compared to Alain Prost and Jim Clark, really did something for him. He really kind of liked it.
I think it does mean a lot to him. I think you look at when he got presented with Ayrton Senna's trophy, or helmet I should say, in Montreal for equalling his pole position record. Yes, it's different because Senna was his sort of hero, but I think Hamilton does have a strong-ish sense of the history of the sport. Not an absolute geek about it, but more so than some of the other drivers in the grid who, couldn't tell you who was the 2009 world champion, probably, So
Jenson Button.
Very good. So I'd certainly think it does mean a lot to him, and I think for him to become the man with the most pole positions in Formula One, I think it will mean the world to him.
And I think we've seen from his behaviour during the build-up to this Grand Prix, where he came across that he thinks he's almost bigger than the sport, and I think to just dominate and get the records and be compared with the greatest of all time, almost emphasises that point for him. It's almost justification for his behaviour.
Valtteri Bottas is just to our right, wearing a large black coat and a white baseball cap. He's just shaking hands and hugging some of the engineers and some of the tyre engineers as well for the team. What a great recovery drive for Valtteri Bottas. He started in P9, and yes, he's got one of the best cars underneath him on the grid, but to manage himself into a podium position and second place as well, it was a pretty impressive display this weekend, wasn't it?
Yep, really good drive. I think he's really coming of age, should we say, at Mercedes. That's not quite the right phrase for it.
Finding his feet?
Yeah, finding his feet. That's a better one. At Mercedes, I think, as Tom said at the end of commentary, there's a real chance now that Mercedes will sign him for next year because of the improvement that he's showing. If he can continue to be this sort of good racing driver, I think they'll definitely keep him rather than trying to get some bigger name in there potentially. I think he's doing enough at the moment.
More than enough. I think he's made one mistake this year that the team will frown upon, and that was when he spun behind the safety car in China. The rest of the time, he's been a very solid number 2. Hamilton has been very quick to praise him at every opportunity. They work very well together, so I can't see those teammates being split up next year.
Let's hear from Valtteri Bottas.
A lot of fun today, and as a team we did perfect job, so yeah, just really happy about today and the result we got as a team. And Lewis was very quick today obviously, but I don't think I was too slow either today. So
when you started this race in P9, could you hope, or were you realistically thinking you could get onto the podium and a second spot as well?
For me, podium was the minimum target for today, so I'm really happy to be second, for sure. Winning is winning, but starting P9 and trying to beat Lewis from there, who starts from pole, is not easy, so I'll take second for now today.
But it's still game on for you in the championship.
Yeah, I think after today I was catching the leader of the championship, so still all good, still many races to go, so still in the fight.
I think secretly a lot of people will be very happy to see you as a world champion this year.
Good, that's good to hear. I would be happy too.
So that's Valtteri Bottas, the man who finished in second place and continues to reaffirm the choice that Mercedes made in bringing him from Williams at the end of last year when Nico Rosberg retired into that team. Now, third place. I don't know how many people would have put a bet on this, but third place, Kimi Raikkonen for Ferrari. Tom, thoughts?
I wouldn't have bet on it, but I think after qualifying where he was quicker than Sebastian Vettel, this is a track. Kimi Raikkonen did all of his racing, the one season of car racing he did,
14 car races.
in Formula Renault in England, and he actually lived in England during the early part of his Formula One career as well. So he feels as English as he could possibly be for a Finn, and he relishes, he loves coming to Silverstone. He has a lot of support. He drove for McLaren for many years, English team, so he knows Silverstone very well. He's done lots of testing here, and he's super brave. So through Copse and Beckett's, Vettel couldn't live with him all weekend. So I think I was confident that he might have beaten Vettel today if the team, as long as the team hadn't tried to swap positions. But I think, yes, having thought about it, and with a little bit of hindsight, I think I might have bet on him to finish third. I think he had the legs of Red Bull, he had the legs of his teammates, so yeah, just the Mercedes ahead of him.
So positives for Ferrari this weekend, but also quite large negatives as Lewis Hamilton just walks down to our right, still doing media quite some time after the race finish and crowd surfing his way. I think annoyed Kimi Raikkonen quite a lot because Kimi Raikkonen went to the press room along with Valtteri Bottas and waited and waited and waited and waited, and Lewis Hamilton continued to crowd surf and do high fives with the fans, and it took an age for him to actually make his way to the press conference room. But some of the questions Raikkonen faced were about this tyre incident. Just, Jack, remind people what happened with the Ferrari tyres.
Well, with I think 3 laps to go for Raikkonen and 2 laps to go for Vettel, both of them had problems with their front left tyre. Raikkonen sort of started to delaminate and flap around a little bit, but that was sort of all right. He managed to get the car back to the pits and change it. Sebastian Vettel had more of a puncture look to it, so as a result, and he got it halfway around the lap, so that started flapping around and almost taking the wheel off its holding on the suspension. So a bit more dramatic for Vettel, had further to go, so he lost more time as a result and finished down in 7th place. Very odd to see it affect both of the Ferraris in the final 2 laps, and at the same time Max Verstappen pitted, and we were, what on earth is going? But then at the end Red Bull said to Max, that's why we pitted you, we were worried that was going to happen to you as well.
Yeah, I think I've spoken to a couple of the engineers, and a lot of them were concerned. Both of the front tyres were degrading very quickly towards the end of that race, and they were also saying that because Ferrari, the way they tried to do the undercut with Sebastian Vettel, they sent him out, and he absolutely hammered those tyres. So the first lap out would have done an extraordinary amount of damage to that tyre, and that's why they say that they think the Ferrari suffered more. But they do have concerns going forward that the same could happen again at Spa, which is another circuit with a lot of energy and load going through those front tyres. So I think questions will probably be asked of Pirelli, who supply the tyres. But let's hear from Kimi Räikkönen talking about the problems with the tyres.
Oh, it was fine, no vibration, nothing, and it just suddenly exploded. No, not really exploded. The air was in the tyre, but the rubber part came off and was slapping around, so obviously far from ideal, but I don't know why, it just suddenly went.
Do you worry that Mercedes have made a step forward, Kimi?
I think if we compare last year in this recent circuits, we are for sure closer than we were a year ago, so have they made difference, or is it just because the places, who knows, but I think we see what happens in the next race, and obviously we have some work to do and improve.
So that's our third place man, Kimi Räikkönen, who is at least trying to take some of the positives out of this weekend. He was quite chatty after the race. I was quite surprised. Yesterday we got one word from him. Today, couldn't shut him up.
Well, he had a lot going on in his race, I think. Quite usually he sort of plods around a little bit behind Sebastian Vettel, and finishes fourth. You know, that's sort of his thing. But I think he had plenty to talk about in this Grand Prix, and I think he did a good job. Conversely, for Sebastian Vettel, it was the first weekend this season, I'd say, where he's been a little bit off. Not terrible, but the weekends we saw Hamilton have in Russia, for example. This is the first time this season, and we spoke on the previous podcast so much about consistency and Vettel, consistent. This is the first one where he had a little bit of a slip. That's his lowest finishing position of the season so far.
That goes to show how consistent he's being this season, I suppose, that's his lowest, and it wasn't something that he could control, that tyre delaminating at the end. Let's hear from Sebastian Vettel. Now, I have to excuse this audio because he wasn't stopping for many people to speak, so I am a little out of breath when I speak to him because I'm running down the pit lane to speak to him. Sebastian, obviously a disappointing report. Just tell us what happened out there.
Well, you saw, didn't you?
How much notice did you have that it was going to go?
None.
How disappointed are you then? You lead the championship by 1 point, 19-point swing.
I think we could have had a better result today. That's what is disappointing, but in the end I think we can be happy that we could recover at least.
Understandably, Tom, Sebastian Vettel bitterly disappointed with the big swing of 19 points that sees Lewis Hamilton come within 1 place of him, and I think he would have come away from here thinking, I've got this. Hamilton's been partying, I've got this.
I think he's a little bit annoyed at himself because in Pirelli's defence he had a huge lock-up on that front left tyre whilst he was scrapping and coming into Vale, and I think that is one of the reasons why he had that problem towards the end of the race. And this is actually, yes, he won this Grand Prix in 2009, but it's always been something of a bogey track for him. Through the fast corners he hasn't been able to live with his teammates. Mark Webber was quicker than him here, and now Kimi Räikkönen is quicker than him in Ferrari as well. So it has been a disappointing day for him on many levels. He didn't get the performance from the car, and of course in that championship battle.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Lewis Hamilton finally breaks free from the media and press and goes to celebrate with his team. Toto Wolff at the end of that race was ecstatic. I think to get the 1-2 for Mercedes here at a home race for them was really important and meant an awful lot to them. Other good days were had by Jack Nicholls?
Other good days were had by Nico Hülkenberg. I think I'd given him my driver the day before, but that Renault has a good bit of pace in it. Conversely, you have to spare a thought for his teammate Jolyon Palmer. There's questions about his pace and his future, etc. He had a good race in Austria, but qualified 11th, which was decent, slower than Nico Hülkenberg, but you thought this might be a decent race for him, get his first points of the season, and then the car breaks down on the formation lap. I mean, he hasn't had enough pace this year so far, but I tell you what, he has not had much luck either.
No, he hasn't, and if he does lose his seat after this race, maybe after the next race, wherever it may be, I think he'll look back at this year and go, could I have achieved with that car if only I've had a little bit of luck and reliability. So yes, as we said, Hülkenberg finished in 6th. Ahead of him was Daniel Ricciardo, who made us absolutely stunning drive all the way from the back, and his teammate Max Verstappen was just in front of him in 4th place. And we've already said about Sebastian Vettel finishing 7th. Ocon and Perez. Ocon finally beats Perez, so he will be delighted. So that Force India battle has finally swung in Ocon's direction, and then Felipe Massa for Williams managing to finish in 10th, the final points paying position. Tom, did anyone stand out for you in particular?
Daniel Ricciardo, 19th to 5th. He was just he was tenacious, he was fast, he was decisive in his overtakes. Brilliant drive by him. But to be honest, we're not surprised by that now. He's had 5 consecutive podiums prior to this race. He doesn't seem to have the qualifying pace of Max Verstappen this year, but boy does he have the race pace. Really, really good.
Yeah, those Red Bulls look impressive. And next out, it's the Hungaroring, which is one of the tracks that people said there, and maybe Singapore, they would have a realistic shot at maybe winning.
Wow, well that's that's big talk, but I mean that is one of the reasons why they gave Daniel Ricciardo a precautionary gearbox change, and one of the reasons why he started from the back of the grid today is because they wanted to give him a clean weekend in Hungary in 2 weeks.
The Red Bull Junior team, though, Toro Rosso, had a horrible day. On the opening lap, Daniel Kvyat lost control of his car, smashed into the side of Carlos Sainz, and they were both effectively eliminated. Kvyat also got 2 points on his licence and a drive-through penalty, and I think they had suspension problems with him as well. Sainz was out on the spot. Really not a good day for Toro Rosso.
And I don't know how long Kvyat can hold on to that seat for. He's never been quite the same driver since he got booted out of Red Bull and Verstappen got promoted, and psychologically he's not come back from that, and I think he'll really struggle.
Well, he wasn't the same driver before he got booted out, because that's why he got booted out. You know, to be fair to him.
He had a couple of rough patches, and he crashed into the back of Vettel, which didn't help, because Vettel then went and spoke to Christian Horner at Red Bull and said, "Oh, my mate crashed into him," and it all got a little bit uncomfortable, and Verstappen's people were pushing incredibly hard. So I feel it's unfair to say Kvyat wasn't a decent driver before that. I just think that totally took any confidence that he had completely. We have digressed massively, because Lewis Hamilton is the winner of the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, and going forward, how much will that work in his favour and give him motivation to win this championship?
I think he'll feel like today was finally a day where everything went right. Having lost a Grand Prix victory because of a wobbly headrest, having lost a potential good qualifying position thanks to a dodgy gearbox, he'll finally think, you know, I did my job today, and Lady Luck, if you will, was on my side as well, with the Ferraris running into trouble and his teammate doing such a good job to finish second.
A clear defining moment of the championship, Tom?
I do think it might be one of those, Jenny. I mean, there will be more twists and turns in this World Championship. Of course they are, because we're only at the halfway point. But I'm going to say it again. I think it's ominous, the pace of Mercedes now. They are so quick round here. They were quick through the twisty bits. They were quick through the fast bits. Hamilton, when he's on form, is unbeatable. So when he performs like he did this weekend, you do have to wonder why some of those off weekends, where do they come from? Because he can be so brilliant. But
not enough partying, Tom, clearly.
Yeah, exactly. Head back to Greece, where he was, of course, during the build-up to this race. But yeah, Lewis has been emphatic, and I think Ferrari, Vettel, they'll all be a little bit worried this evening.
Driver of the day was Daniel Ricciardo, but everybody leaving here will have smiles on their face at a weekend where Hamilton dominated so superbly. Can he do it again at the Hungaroring in 2 weeks' time? That's the question. Make sure you join us to find out.
Sports with Sean Caravilles.